2 loops.
Okay.
And let's see, I have the, I'm reading it upside down.
I know. Which one are you on?
Okay, I'm on the
Which one are you
yellow one.
The yellow.
Not even on there, is there? And let's
I see
see.
the rainbow one. Army service ribbon.
Yeah. And I have the United Nations service.
Yes.
And I have the
Overseas service.
overseas service. The United Nations. I have that one.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see.
NCO professional development.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh.
Oh my gosh.
Well, there they are. It took us. It did. It took us about 2 hours to get them all together, you know, and what order they're supposed to be in.
Right.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, well, I don't have all of these that I need, but
Sounds like he's in a witness
that's
protection
okay.
program.
Yeah.
Might be seeing me on America's Most Wanted.
Maybe.
Jeannie, get your name spelled right. Well, Bill has.
When I was in that one we took over at your house, in the paint can.
Yeah, I got that on tape.
Okay. Oh boy.
You can tell that if you want.
No, I don't think so. Okay.
Today's date is November 8th, 2002. The place of the interview is Garden City, Michigan. And I'm interviewing Rose Gibbs, and my name is Janie Pacheco from Eastern Michigan University, and the person working the camera is Gary Kelly. So, you want to go ahead and get started, Rose?
Yes.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about your family life and where you were born and raised?
I was born in Blackstone, Virginia, Nottoway County. A family of 4 kids, mother and father. My father was deceased when I was 3 years old. And we moved to Brunswick County. My mother remarried about 4 years later. And we moved back to Nottoway County. And my stepfather was a farmer. Of course, my mother was a housewife. And we moved a couple times, you know, but we were still within the Nottoway County. I attended school at downtown for the 1st grade. In 2nd grade, moved to Blackstone. And the strange thing about it is, and I want to tell this because don't be born in September.
Is that a bad month?
That's a bad month. I was so happy that I was going to school. Got to the classroom, and the teacher said, "I'm sorry. You can go to school this year. You will have to wait another year. You're not 6 years old yet." Okay, this is like September the 3rd. My birthday's on the 14th. So I went back home and I told my mother about it. And after that, I had a different attitude towards school. I don't care whether I go or not. They wouldn't let me go when I wanted to go. So, but I got through it, and I graduated from high school in 1946. And let's see, the first job I had was at Rose's 5 and Dime. And but before this, we can go back a little bit. I grew up on a farm. It was a tobacco farm. We had the bright tobacco, or flue-cured tobacco, and the dark tobacco, corn. And I can tell you some funny stories during that time, but I don't think you want to hear them.
We have a lot of other stories to cover.
Yeah. So, get back to the Roses 5 and Dime. The lady that was in charge of the telephone office came down and said, Rose, would you like to be a clerk in the office? And I said, well, sounds like a good idea. So I started work for the telephone company as a clerk, receiving payments, doing telephone directory work, and balancing payments and such. And I said to her one day, I said, you know, Evelyn, I would like to learn the switchboard. Excuse me. She said, I think that's a good idea. So I learned the switchboard. And she said, we have people who are out sick at times and people on vacation, and you can fill in. And I said, okay. Well, next thing I know is, Rose, can you go to South Hill for 2 weeks? They have a girl on vacation. Sure, no problem. So I filled in for 2 weeks there. And then I came back to Blackstone, and then again, Rose, we need you at South Boston, Virginia. I said, okay, for 2 weeks? Yeah, okay. So I worked 2 weeks there, and I came back, and in the meantime, I'm still going to school, taking evening classes, night classes, whenever I could work them in my schedule around work. I decided I think I'll move to Richmond. I had my 2 brothers who lived in Richmond. So I went to work for Chesapeake and Potomac telephone companies. And there is where I saw the big sign, Uncle Sam wants you. And inviting the females, to enlist into the service. And I saw this sign that said, free clothes, free food, free boarding, free training, and $75 a month. I said, ooh-wee. That's pretty good. I think I'll go down and apply, which 3 of us girls did. We all 3 backed out at first. He said, no, we don't want to go. Then I changed my mind. I said, yeah, I'm going in. So I was inducted on March the 2nd, 1949. And here I thought, too, well, I'll get to see the country. I'm stationed 30 miles from my home.
Oh my. That's funny.
So, in basic training, they had a sign in the office that says, if you want a weekend pass, sign up. Well, every weekend I signed up. Every weekend I got a pass. But really, you were only supposed to have 1 pass during the 8 weeks basic training. Well, if my card was there, I took it and went home.
So you got 8 weeks.
Yeah. And at the end of basic training, you saw the picture of the sergeant.
Why don't you show us that picture?
Here she is. She said to me,
Go ahead and show it to you.
she said to me, Gibbs, you know you were only supposed to have 1 pass during your basic training. I said, really? Only 1? She said, you had 8. I says, well, I tell you what, there was a sign up that said, if you want to pass, sign up for it. I said, that's what I did. And I said, when I got ready to leave to go on past, the card was there, and I said, I took it and I went. Nobody said anything about it until now. You saying something about it.
And it was too late.
It was too late. Right.
So now you told us that you enlisted in March of '49,
Mhm.
and what part did you enlist in? What was your official title?
Well, it was a recruit when you first went in.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got promoted to private. Then private first class, then corporal, then sergeant, and sergeant first class. And
Did you make it?
sergeant first class, E7.
Okay. And
That's
I know there's a
everything.
story behind that. Behind E7 and not E8.
Oh, yes. No one had said anything about weight until they got to thinking about it, I guess, and they figured the Army was too fat. So I was about 10 pounds overweight, according to the chart. And I had been recommended for E8 promotion, and then I had been in the job for the last 5-6 years. And I had been recommended for promotion and approved, with the exception of one guy. And he said, you lose your 10 pounds, you can have your E8. And I said, I tell you what, I've been weighing the same amount for the last 10 years. Now all of a sudden, I've got to lose 10 pounds to make my E8. You keep it. I'll just take my E7 and enjoy it.
I admire that. I admire that.
Well, I don't think it was fair. Now, if they want people to lose weight and control weight, it's something else, but don't use weight as a factor for promotions when it hasn't been enforced. So, I still wear the same,
You stood up for yourself.
right? Oh, I could tell you some times when I was in service, I stood up for my rights, and not only mine, but the other girls too. I completed the basic training in the administrative school, and I was transferred to Fitzsimmons Army Hospital. And I had told the sergeant major there that I wanted to go to the lab school, and he said when vacancy became available, I would go. In the meantime, I worked in the medical library, and we'll bring in Major Charles Brown's book on the Bilibid prison. And he would come into the library and sat and talk, and then he talked about his experience as a prisoner in the Philippines. And he wrote this book.
And this was at the medical library?
Yes. And he was a neuropsychiatrist, and he worked in the NP service at that hospital. And I read this book and read this book, and every time I read it, I find a different poem that I like. The first one I liked was Ode to a Bedbug. Should I read it? So, I have a rendezvous in scarlet, a trias in mortal stain. Tonight will ebb this blood of mine from near depleted vein. No wound in far-flung battle line, no dagger will take the toll. No romance in this troth of mine, this trice in bedding roll. With this diminutive little skylark, who will be there and take the toll, fill with blood his empty chalice, then back to ghetto in the roll. Ah, this rendezvous in Scarlet has left me little blood to lose. but night will find me in my role when the bedbug I transfuse. And it's another little one in here that I really like. And I'm doing this one for Gary. Gary doesn't like smokers. Mark doesn't like smokers. And I'm a smoker. And when I read this, I can remember seeing the guys would put out a cigarette, and I would see another guy come right along behind him and squash that cigarette, but they sort of picked up the little pieces, put it in paper, and smoke it. And where are you? The name of it is called tobacco. And oh man, I know it's in here.
And so it sounds as if you were good friends with the author then.
Oh yes, and he came in, and then I got my orders for Far East Command, Japan. Here it is, tobacco. God must have made tobacco with the other things he did to keep his faith with prisoners behind the bars of Belleville. Men starve and lose religion, and this you'll think is odd. They light up their old tobacco and believe again in God. See? So when a person wants a cigarette, they want a cigarette, you know. So you're blushing.
It's just funny.
And then they have another one that's called Crumbs. It's 4 verses long. I said, did you ever pick crumbs right off of the floor? Tobacco, I mean. And then look there for more? And roll them in paper from a prison latrine? Oh, I know you said this is rather unclean. But when a man loves tobacco and is hungry as well, he'll pick up the butts from the devil in hell. And the crumbs and the ashes rolled in paper so thin, you will smoke down to nothing and save again and again. That's just the first 2 verses of that poem, but it's true. And tobacco's a big issue with me.
It sounds as if it was pretty popular then, too.
Oh yes, packs of cigarettes were given to personnel that was in the military service. They didn't have to buy them. They were given up. But I didn't smoke then.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I didn't smoke until I was 55 years old.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And a cigarette to me is relaxing.
Well.
So I like my tobacco.
And you've earned that right.
Yeah, I grew up on a tobacco farm and didn't smoke. Everybody around me smoked. And I didn't complain about it. I inhaled smoke. And I didn't complain about it. And now you see people standing outside of the doors. They have to go outside and have their cigarette. I don't think it's fair.
Makes you angry.
Yeah, well, it may be something that they're doing that I don't like,
Right.
you know, and you accept that, and that's the way it is. But to force something onto someone, I don't think it's right. If you want to quit smoking, you'll quit. Yeah.
Now, I'm just kind of curious because I see that your uniform says Sutherland, but we're introduced to you as Rose Gibbs.
Well, Sutherland is my married name.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about that, or?
My husband was in the Marine Corps, and we were married for 29 years. And I divorced him, and it took about 4 years for it to become final. So then do I say I was married to him for 25 years, or do I say for 29? So, but
Right.
in the court proceedings, I asked to retain my maiden name, and Gibbs is my maiden name.
So, did you meet him while you were in the service then?
Yes, I met him when I was in Japan. On Sundays, we would go out to this club, in staff, NCO club, and have dinner. And they had two bands. One was a country and western band, and the other one was a Japanese band. They would alternate.
You had a variety then.
Yeah. So, and I met him there. But he was with the Marine Air Wing. They call them Mustangs. And they fly back and forth from Korea to the air base called Itami, Itami. And that was at a place called Hataoikaiki. So, but when we first got to Japan, we got off the ship and went on the bus. The bus had bars up at the doors and the windows. And I said to myself, Rose, what have you gotten yourself into now? You know, and I said, there's bars up at the window. And they said, well, Rose, you know this is wartime. You know, I said, yeah, I know that. Bars in the bus. So we were taken to our quarters. And we only remained in Yokohama for about a week. Then we drove the train overnight down to Osaka. And I worked at Osaka Army Hospital. We received casualties from Korea. And then we worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Yeah, until we got additional help in. Because sometimes we did have to go back at nighttime and take information on the nearest of kin. And so then the Army decided, I don't know what took place, but anyway, the Osaka hospital went back to the Japanese nationals. And we were transferred out to the 279th General Hospital, doing the same job. Yeah. But it was nice. I could tell you some laugh, and you could just laugh and laugh and laugh.
Well, we want to know something about what you did while you were.
Well, besides working in the lab, I went on a fundraiser. We were trying to get funds for this orphanage. So, well, I put my civilian dress on, went out, got the tickets, and it was the raffle tickets, and so I was selling them. And I approached this one man, and then I said, I know he's got money. So I sold him. I said, oh, come on, I know you have more money than buy some tickets. I said, these are for the little kids. You know? And come to find out, he was the air base commander.
Oh,
I mean, he was the head man. Well, I didn't know. I was selling tickets.
right. You were trying to help the children.
Right. So I didn't know until I got a letter of commendation. Yeah. It was so funny.
And what did that letter say?
It was congratulating me on the efforts, you know, that I had put in.
And did you keep it?
I have it someplace.
Somewhere.
Yeah, someplace. So yes, I do. So, and then another experience I had, we went to the Nara Zoo. That zoo is full of monkeys. So I'd walk up to the fence and I said, chee 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 chee. And I looked behind me and I'd see all these Japanese ladies, they had the hand over the mouth like this. Giggling. And so I said to Mama-san, back at the quarters, and I told her what had happened. She says, well, don't you know what chi-chi means in Japanese? I said, no, well, I don't. I said, I always called the monkey chi-chi. She said, it means breast. Empty. So here I'm calling these monkeys cheech, cheech, cheech. And right behind you is some sake cups. That one. And the other one that looks like a toadstool. Yeah, okay, this is sake cup. Okay, I had two of these. I don't know what happened to the other one, but I had two of these. And we went to a festival, like, and I saw these. I said, oh, what nice ashtrays you would make. So I brought them back and I set them on my dresser. And again, Mama said, oh, Rose, you went so-and-so. She said, that was the festival of fertility. Well, took another look at this toadstool.
Oh my.
Yeah.
So it sounds as if you had a really good time over there, even though you worked so much.
Oh yeah, oh yes, I enjoyed it. I sure did. We'd go down to Wakayama Beach, and we didn't go into the water though. We just walk along the sand. Yeah.
Would you like me to put those down?
Yeah. Okay. And another time that was funny to me was going over. It was a group from Texas, the cavalry, and we got assigned to where we were going. And that weekend they called, "Hey, you girls want to go for a ride in a Jeep on the beach?" "Sure, let's go." So we went, and we had bed check at 12 o'clock. Everybody had to be in. Well, the Jeep got stuck in the sand. I said, we won't make it back in time, so I better call. So I called and said we would be late. And we got back to CQ quarters. We signed in, and I said, what time is it? She said, it's 0001. I said, 1 minute late. And I didn't think any more about it. But the other three said, boy, we're going to get it. We're going to get disciplinary action on this. Well, the next day they called me down to the office. And they said, here it comes. Well, I went in, and the first thing they said, Gibbs, can you type? I said, yes, I can type. So they handed me the pile of papers to type. Well, I never typed so fast. I got those papers out the way. And I said, do you have any more? And they said, no, you can go back to your quarters. So the other girls were sitting down there, and first thing they said, what'd they say? What did they say? I said, they didn't say anything. And that night we left for Osaka, and we were sitting on, standing on the deck, waiting for the train, you know. And I said to the CEO, I'm sorry we were late last night coming in. She says, oh, you were just 1 minute late, and don't think anything of it. And I got to thinking, that CQ told us wrong. It should have been 0100, not 0001. Say we were 1 hour late, not 1 minute. Well, we didn't say anything about it. We headed down to Osaka overnight. So,
You got lucky.
yeah, yeah, we did.
Yeah.
But I can honestly say I've never had my passport. I've never had disciplinary action taken. I've never went AWOL. So everything was on up and up. So, and then getting ready to come home. Well, I thought we was going to head to San Francisco, but we headed to the Philippines. And we went shopping. This Navy chief took us shopping, to the movies, and we went by this one store, and it sold coconuts. And there was the biggest coconut I've ever seen in my life. And my, excuse me, my mother loves coconut. So I said, I'm going to buy that coconut, and I'm going to take that coconut home with me. And the girl says, Rose, you know you can't take that coconut home. I said, I'm taking that coconut home. So the merchant put the coconut in a brown paper bag. He didn't roll it like you normally would. He just squashed it up. So that's the way I carried that brown paper bag. Got on the ship, came home, and San Francisco, and then plane to Selfridge Air Force Base, then to Richmond. Still carrying that brown paper bag with that coconut in it. And no one along the way has said, what do you have in that brown paper bag? The only person that asked me, what do you have in that brown paper bag, was my mother. I said, Mama, it's the coconut. She said, well, where on earth did you get this coconut? I got it in the Manila, Philippines. So we had coconut pie, cake, and candy. Oh, it was Christmas. It was time for it. See, I came back to the States November '53.
Oh, okay.
And it took about 30 days to get here, but after we left Japan. But, yeah. Then I was assigned again to Fort Lee. And then I went 1 year school in Texas, Medical Field Service School. I went to school a year. And Paul, the man I married, he was at Cherry Point, North Carolina, and we corresponded with each other. And he said, on your way back to Virginia, stop by to see me. I have a surprise for you. I said, ooh, surprise for me. So I went by to see him, and he says, will you marry me? I said, marry you? Have you thought about this? I said, well, give me time to think about it. He said, if I didn't want to marry you, I wouldn't have asked you. I said, okay, but give me time to think about it. So this is like in September of '55, and we were married in December of '55.
So you guys got married after you came back then?
He came back to the States before I did.
Okay.
Excuse me. Yeah.
And so could you tell us a little bit about what you saw while you were in the Korean War? When you were in Japan?
Mostly the casualties. They were flown in from Korea. And they were lined up in the hallways, and you didn't have time really to think about what had happened. It was what you could do to help them. And then when we were at 279th, they had a receiving ward there. But when I was at the Osaka Army Hospital, we had frostbite cases. So we set up a center for the frostbite cases. The cases sort of dwindled off after the Army issued a warning.
Yeah, I think you had a picture with a frostbite case.
Yeah, but you can only see the nurse.
Oh,
Okay, you know,
right.
you can't see the area that's frostbitten. The Army made a statement that the guys would be court-martialed if they did not wear the wool socks that had been issued to them. So the cases dwindled down to the point where the center was closed. The guys weren't wearing the wool socks, and it was getting frostbitten. But I wouldn't say I'm a witness to the fact that they didn't wear the socks. I'm a witness to the fact that they did issue an order. If you don't wear the socks, you're going to be court-martialed. And also, the guys that came down with a hemorrhagic fever, they came in, and I had to make my ward rounds, and they seemed to understand what you were saying to them, with their eyes, but they couldn't speak. And they weren't in a coma, but they weren't active in that sense of the word. And then there's one guy that he was Ethiopian. See, this is a United Nations effort. So I went into the room, and I looked at his name tag on his armband, I should guess you call it. I said, Tulo Sambita. I'll never forget this as long as. And I checked the other was Tulo Sambita. Not his head, yes. I drew his blood. And I got ready to leave. And he said, Toodaloo. That was the only thing Toodaloo. I said, Toodaloo. And that amazed me. And I had to smile, back at him. And he smiled back. And I've never forgotten him. And I said, Toodaloo. That was so funny.
So was it frustrating to not be able to communicate with some of the patients?
Oh, yes. Very, very much so. And then, too, we had to spend so much time in each section of the lab. All right, here's my time to spend it in the morgue.
And this was in the lab?
This is at Fitzsimmons.
Okay.
That's not overseas. So my time was when the guys died of the hemorrhagic fever, and the CEO of the hospital came down and said, "Hey, you guys, make sure you're wearing your gloves and your mask. We don't know exactly what has caused the deaths of these individuals." And I said, "Oh, look out here." It was so it was two of us, Hefner and myself, and the pathologist, Grant Johnson. And we were doing the autopsies on those patients. And I was glad to get out of that section. And then one night I was on emergency callback. The blood bank refrigerator went out. But all the blood had to be transferred to the morgue refrigerator. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, we get orders, we need blood. So we had to go into the morgue refrigerator and get the blood. I was coming out, something went by, I feel someone beside me, and I almost made another entrance to the morgue, but what it was just dropped down and it hit me, but it scared the life out of me.
Oh, yes. You don't expect movement there.
Mm-mm. So she says something else that happened. Oh, this is a terrible story, but it's true. The chief nurse was in the hospital as a patient, and she came down to the lab. I was on callback duty. And we were sitting there, and she says, "Rosie, you have any magazines to read?" And I said, "Yeah." Help yourself and take them up to your room, you know. So she left, and I was working in the chemistry lab, and I heard this plop outside of the window. But what I was doing, I couldn't stop and go and look. Then, if I did, I would have to start the test all over again. And it was her. She had jumped out of the window. Yeah. I was just talking to her. It can't be. But it was.
That must have been difficult then.
Yeah, it was. So.
Did that happen a lot where you knew the patients that you were serving, or did you know some of the soldiers that came in or anything?
Just the one was Waverly, you know, that was on active duty.
Why don't you tell us about that story?
Well, that was when I was in school at Fort Sam, and I was doing blood typing. And I looked up and I said, "Waverly Cole. We graduated from high school together." And then, of course, he was going through the anesthesiologist, and I was going through the lab. So, but I didn't get to see him after that.
Oh, okay.
So then I went back to Fort Lee, got married, got pregnant, and got out. The funny thing about it was, they said if you got married, you could get out, you know. Well, I put in to be discharged by reason of marriage. They turned me down. They said, "No, you have a critical MOS, and you have gone to the 1-year school." No. So Sergeant Major says, "Well, I don't see but one thing for you to do, Rose, and that's get pregnant." And I said, "I'll work on it." So I was pregnant at the time, but I didn't know it. So, but I knew something was wrong with me, because I just soon tell somebody off as looked at them, and that wasn't my nature. So that one day, the OBGYN doctor came through the lab, and I told him how I was feeling. I said, "I'm not nauseous. I don't have any signs of pregnancy or anything." I said, "But something's wrong." I said, "My disposition," I said, "I'll soon tell you off it's not." He says, "During your break, come down and I'll check you to see." And I said, "Okay." So I went down, and he said, "Girl, you're pregnant." And I said, "Sign that little piece of paper." And I took the paper back to the Sergeant Major. And then this is about a period of 2 weeks difference. He said, "I know, I told you to do it, but how did you do it so fast?" Because my husband was stationed down at Cherry Point, and I'm in Fort Lee, but he didn't come up during the Easter vacation. And I had a little girl, Lori, and she was born in New York.
So that's how you were able to spend time with your husband then,
Oh yeah.
to get pregnant?
No, he came up for a weekend visit.
Right, but after you got pregnant?
That was when I got pregnant, when he came up for a weekend visit. But I didn't know it. You know, I was pregnant. So the doctor checked me.
Right. And so then were you able to move in with him?
No, during that period of time, he got orders for I&I staff duty in New York.
Okay.
So we moved to New York. And Laurie was born at St. Albans Naval Hospital. And then the doctor says, I'll see you here next year this time. I said, oh, no, you won't. The next year, I was there 2 weeks earlier.
Oh,
So I had 50 weeks apart. And, yeah, that's a record. 2 weeks, 50 weeks apart. And then he got orders for Okinawa. And I went back to Blackstone, and I worked at Fort Lee as a civilian. The girl who was a microbiologist was on pregnancy leave, and they needed someone to fill in. So I took that position, and when she came back, I transferred down to Pickett, and I worked as a clerk typist. So, and then he came home, and we went down to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And during that time, they have what they call a RIF program. Now, this is getting in his career. So he was enlisted and became an officer. And after the Korean War, they had the RIF program, which means reduction in force. So he could get out or he could stay in, but he would have to go back to his enlisted rank, which he did. And I told him, I said, it's your choice. So he stayed in, and then he got orders for Vietnam, and I worked as a telephone operator at Lejeune. And I was sitting there at the switchboard on Christmas Eve night, and I said, there wasn't any lights on, no calls coming or going. I said, I think I'll see if I can call him using Da Nang. So I dialed Hawaii. I said, I would like Da Nang on an OP, please. Sure. So she put me through to the Air Force Base in the Philippines. From there to Da Nang. Da Nang answered, and I said, I would like 3rd Marine Division, 3rd Recon Battalion. And guess who answered the phone? My husband. I said, Paul? Yes, this is Paul. This is Rose. Rose? Well, I'll be daggone. Rose? Oh, I'll be daggone. I said, yes, this is Rose. Merry Christmas. He said, Merry Christmas to you, too. Rose? Well, I'll be daggone. He says, Rose? Yeah. I says, Captain Hardy there? Yes, he's here. Put him on. Let me see if I can call Charlottesville, where his wife lived. Yeah, but she wasn't home. But he got to talk to his father-in-law. So he said after the conversation, they went to the colonel. He was having a Christmas party for them. And the two walked in, and the colonel asked them, says, what are you two been up to? He said, I talked to my wife tonight. No way, no female getting through to this unit. Yeah. It was funny.
So you were able to speak to him on Christmas? Well, Christmas Eve.
Yeah. But you know, you couldn't make calls to Vietnam during the wartime unless you were a telephone operator.
So it must have been difficult then to have a relationship with him being gone.
Oh yeah, it was terrible. And then he came home. Then he was on I&I staff at Roanoke, Virginia, and he pulled his tour of duty there. And then it was time for him to get another assignment. So he called headquarters Marine Corps, and he had a buddy working there, and they said, "Your order says Vietnam." Well, at that time he had 23 years, and he says, I do. So I'm putting in my retirement papers. I am not going back to Vietnam. So he got his retirement, and then he stayed in the Ready Reserves, I guess you call it, until he got his 30 in. And then about 3 weeks before his 65th birthday, before he'd get his Social Security check, he passed away. Yeah, so. But by that time, after the divorce, he married twice. So he was at Lumina Island, state of Washington. You know where that is? Well, I talked to Gene, his brother, and Gene said he did not want to make that trip. He didn't feel like it, and he did not want to make the trip. But his wife. Oh, another thing too about my ex-husband, I should say, he liked redheads, and his last wife was a redhead. And I said to myself, well, he's happy now. He's got that redhead. So, anyway, at my entering the reserves, I was working, and of course the girls would come over from the center to do the weekend duty. And one of the girls said to me, Rose, you were on active duty, weren't you? And I said, yeah. She said, well, you can come back into service now, even though you have kids. I said, that's the reason I was discharged, is because I was having a kid. She said, but you can come back in. I said, I have 4 now, not 1. She said, it doesn't make any difference. You can come back into the service. So I went over to the service, and I entered the reserves. And I pulled my reserve time, and then when I got, well, you have to have 20 good years, but I had 23 good years, and so 1984 I finished up my reserve time. In 1987 I started getting my little paycheck, which comes in handy.
Right.
Yeah, and it wasn't that hard. The main thing about this is my civilian job correlated with my military job. You know, a lot of times the job in the military is not the same kind of job you would have on the outside, but mine did. So I guess I was lucky in that aspect.
Takes like 10 seconds.
Now, you had mentioned that you stood up for yourself and others,
Yes.
other women. Could you explain that for us?
Okay, one occasion was the time we moved from Osaka Army Hospital out to the 279th General Hospital. Well, we had about 4 issues of clothing, and they gave us 1 wall locker and a foot locker, and they had built a shelf for you to hang your clothes on, which was maybe about 20, wasn't even 24 inches long. So we had the overcoats, the raincoats, summer uniform, winter uniform, and I asked the CO, where can we put these clothes? And so they had an open room with racks in it for you to hang your clothes on. And she said that's all the quartermaster could provide us. And we had a company meeting, and in the meeting I asked her again about additional space to hang our clothes. And she said, I'm sorry, she said, I've done all I can do. I can't do any more. I said, thank you, ma'am, that's what I wanted to hear you say. I came back into the quarters, and at that time we had, well, you've seen a picture of the uniform dresses, hospital dresses had buttons down the front. Well, I started at the bottom, and I just pulled it up, and buttons popped everywhere. And Margie Jennings, she was across the way, and she said, Gibby, what's wrong? She said, I've never seen you like this. I said, well, take a good look, because you may not ever see me looking like this again. I put my Class A uniform on, and I went over to the IG's office, Inspector General. And I told him, anytime that I'm responsible for clothes, you take inspection and the item isn't there, that I have to pay for it. I don't feel that it's right for us to hang our clothes in an open room that anyone could go in and get. And he picked up the phone, he called quartermaster. And I know the next day we had carpenters in there, and we had dressers, and we had what we needed.
Wow.
But you know, the CO, she was, after that, she was just as nice as she could be to me. And well, the girls did. It seemed like to me, every place I got assigned, I was a barracks sergeant. I said, every place. Rose, you're the barracks sergeant. I said, well, barracks sergeant is a person in charge of keeping the place clean and seeing that the other, the duties are done. And then one time down at school, there, it was a Friday night, GI night, and I got a call to come down to the office. I said, ooh, what is this all about? I go down. There stands my brother, was this lovely young lady standing beside him. Says, I want you to meet my wife. Now, he's in the Air Force. He's stationed at Lackland. I said, what? He said, yeah, we just got married. We came by. We'll take you out to dinner. I said, his name was Shelton, but we call him Shelley. And I said, Shelley, you know, I can't go. Tonight's GI night. You know, I said, we have an inspection in the morning. And the CO was there, and she heard it. She says, oh, yes, you can. You go up and get dressed, and you go out to dinner.
Oh,
Yeah. Forget about the inspection.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So you were able to spend time with your brother.
Yeah. And that's the first time, too, that I had eaten an avocado.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And did you like it?
Oh, yeah. I love those things. Yeah. And then going overseas, too. I mean, this is back and forth, but that doesn't matter. When we were at Stoneman, one of the girls' uncles lived in San Mateo. He came, he took us out to dinner and then to the dog races. Well, I had never been to a dog race. Well, I'm telling you, I never laughed so much in all my life seeing those dogs running around after a stick. And then when the girl says, Rose, says, it's the bunny on the end of the stick. I said, you got to be kidding me. They don't have a bunny on the end of that stick. They said, you look closely, you'll see. And sure enough, I thought, now that's crazy. Those poor dogs have done all that running for nothing.
Oh.
Oh, man. So, that's my experience for the races. Let's see what else I can tell you that would be interesting. The clothes you know about.
Could you tell us your opinion of the Korean War as a whole?
Well, I don't think when they fired General MacArthur that this would have happened. I feel that if they had let General MacArthur continue on as to what he was doing, that the conflict would not be there now. That's my opinion of it. I may be entirely wrong, but that's my opinion. I was sad to hear that he'd been fired and another general, replaced him. But it didn't stop the war. The war continued, and I figured, and I've been seriously thinking about it. If they had let MacArthur continue to do what he had planned on doing, the we wouldn't be in the conflict that we have now. They cleared it right out. So,
And could you tell us a little bit about your feelings about the Oral History Project and having the opportunity to do this and share your story with the nation?
I think it's great. You know, you can sit down and chit chat with all your neighbors and friends, you know, but to let the nation know about it. And the other thing is you first this, first this, first that, yeah. And at Fort Lee, Virginia, too, I was the first soldier a month.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your story with us.
Well, there's lots more. We're running out of time.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. I can honestly say it, I enjoyed it, and I appreciate the opportunity to express my viewpoints. And I don't regret a minute that I spent in service. If I had to do it all over, I would do it.